on time. Here's my tea. Okay. So to stretch my legs. Why does this kind of look hokey? Okay, let's see. Do I need to bend it over more? Okay, I see. So the closer you bring that to the camera, the more distorted it looks. Okay, hello everybody. Playing with my lights over here. Let me see. Do I look better? Okay, my little cat's ears over here. Hi everyone. Dr. Tochi here. For those of you who don't know me, Papa Dr. Tochi. Mama of the men's and the women's. I hope you're having a great week. We're live on both YouTube and TikTok. Okay. So remember to get your drink and your snack, your notebook and your pen. And we're going to talk about the Shadow Mother Egregore. Remember to give the video a thumbs up. I like this thing that the Apple OS does. When you show the thumbs up, it will then do a thumbs up thing as well. So remember to give the class a thumbs up. That lets the algorithm know to notify people that class has started. It also encourages me to put out more materials like this. I want to share some interesting, get some feel good, because what we're going to discuss in today's class might be a little bit heavy, but I want to share something interesting. I've now started working out in earnest, and it's so different. Just 2 days of working out is like I'm standing differently, I'm walking differently, just 2 days. It's like my body's like, gimme, 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 gimme. I want that. Oh, take me back to the good old days. I used to work out a lot. I did track and field. I used to be pretty athletic, bodybuilding and the whole works. And then life happened. You know how it is. Have a family, kids, responsibilities, academics, and everything goes to hell in a handbasket. So, and I'm just like gifted, and I'm one of those people that are really gifted with muscle memory. Like, even though I haven't seriously been to the gym in years, but if you look at me, you can see I still have some definition. Okay, like look at that. You can see some definition here, even though I do have some subcutaneous fat there. But you're looking at someone who um, hasn't really been to the gym in years. And so I'm kind of lucky that way. When I was younger, all I needed was 2 weeks in the gym. I'd be like having muscles on my lips. Additional muscle, not the normal muscle lip muscles. I would just be so muscular in 2 weeks, you know. So please do share the live before we start. We're going to talk about the Shadow Mother Egregore. Why is it so difficult to get away from your mother? Why is it so difficult to detach from your mother, even though your mother may not be good for you? Okay, because there are lots of people struggling with this, especially women who are struggling with this, unable to just decouple themselves from their mothers, and they're unhappy, they're sad, they are, just a whole bunch of things going on. And the reason why I'm doing this topic today is because yesterday, for some reason, that was all I was discussing with folks. I speak with the first person, they were having mother issues, speak with the second person, mother issues. And we tend to think that, oh, you couldn't possibly have the kind of mother that I have. And it turns out that many of us have the same kind of mother. And many of us are mothered. You know what I mean? Like, we're grown now, but we were not mothered. There are lots of women who were unmothered and lots of men who were unmothered. Now, there are lots of women who were unfathered and lots of fathers who were unfathered. But, with women, with the stereotypes about women, motherhood, matriarchy and stuff like that, and the expectations of motherhood, I think people tend to feel that a lot more when they're unmothered and the mother is still living. And so there are lots of people who have living mothers, but those living mothers are not mothering. You know what I'm saying? There's no mothering going on. Okay. So get your drink and your snack. Do share the video. And if I forget to encourage people to share the video, please remind me from time to time to urge people to share the video. Because, we get into the topic and then we're like, I forgot to tell people to share the video. Okay. So today's Wednesday, at least in my neck of the woods. I know for some people watching, today is a Thursday. And I hope that your week has been going well. Remember that you can always book me through my website at tochi.us, tochi.us, or drtochi.com. Can book me for your divinations and consultations, spiritual counseling, dream interpretation, spiritual practice coaching, and more. Okay. I'm in the middle of a 10-day spiritual fast and retreat. Okay. And that is going well. That is going well. We're really building a really tight-knit community from that. Just fasting together and cleansing together and doing things together. Okay. For those of you on YouTube, I'm going to change. Oh, okay. Well, I was about to say I'm going to change my server, but it looks like I'm using a strong server already. So hopefully that works out. But let me know if there are issues. If you're on YouTube watching me now, let me know if there are issues with the internet. Okay. Let me know if there are issues with the internet. So, like I was saying earlier, today I just wanted to talk about the Shadow Mother Egregore. Okay. Remember, I've been doing this series on egregores. I want to pull up my notes. So hold on. I'm gonna pull up my notes. Notates. Okay, so TikTok folks, hold on. I'm going to bring you a little bit closer. I'm going to move this device over here. I'm going to move this device over here so I can consult my notes. And then bring you over here. All right. There we go. So that should be okay now. All right. So before we go, hi, Sophia. Before we go into this important topic and heavy topic, I would like us to take a moment to ground ourselves. Okay? So I invite you to ground yourself with me. because today's topic may pull up things for you and you want to be grounded. Okay. Remember to give the class a thumbs up. Okay. That lets the algorithm inform other people and notify other people that we are in class. So, with both of your feet on the ground, touching the ground, I invite you to inhale with me through your nostrils and exhale through your lips. Inhale through your nostrils and exhale through your lips. Inhale through your nostrils and exhale through your lips. Inhale through your nostrils and exhale through your lips. And feel your body calming down. Okay. I would like us to have an authentic conversation around this topic today. I know many people, especially women, um, might get emotional around it, but I need you to remain grounded and to know that all is well, and that every issue that we discuss has a solution. You may repeat this after me. Every problem has a solution. Every problem, every challenge has a solution. Okay. So, we're going to talk about mothers who don't love their daughters and their sons. Okay. Maybe you've experienced that where your own mother didn't love you, or maybe you know of someone that their mother um, just didn't love them. And I have put out a video clip either yesterday or the day before yesterday. I think it was yesterday. And in that audio clip, you'll hear me saying, you cannot force your mother to love you. And it's true. If you're one of those people, you're a daughter or a son, and your mom didn't love you, and your mom still doesn't love you, you cannot force her to love you. I repeat, you cannot force your mother to love you. Many of us get caught up in performance. Oh, if I just did this one thing, my mother would love me. If I did this other thing, my mother would love me. And we find that we're doing all these things, and still the anger is there, the resentment is there, the jealousy is there, the envy is there, the competition is there. And somehow we say to ourselves, well, if I do this other thing, let me show her how helpful I can be. Let me show her how loving I can be. Let me show her how considerate I can be. Let me run errands for her. Let me perform tasks for her. And she will see through all these things that I am lovable and she needs to love me. And so we start doing all these tasks, both the ones she needs us to do and the ones she doesn't need us to do, and still she doesn't love us. And that can be a very painful thing. Because when we come into this world, We want to be loved. We were designed, human beings, we were designed for love and companionship. Okay. And they've had some studies in the past where they studied the outcomes, health outcomes for babies who were touched and babies who were not touched. The babies who were touched, held, cuddled, kissed, caressed were a lot healthier than the babies who were not touched, who were not cuddled, who were not kissed. Grand rising to you, Meiji. So they've done studies on these things. So we know, even from a scientific and a healthcare perspective, that touch is important. Touch is important. And when you look into spiritual care, especially spiritual care of patients and healthcare clients, we find that touch is very important. And just being touched by another human being can strengthen somebody's immune system. And when somebody is going through their day, their weeks, their months, their years not being touched in a humane way, and by touched, I don't mean beating, I don't mean negative touching, just normal touching, a hug, and things like that. You have an incidence of allergies and things popping up in the immune compromise and stuff like that. There's data for that. There's a whole bunch of data out there. So if you're interested in that, you can go on Google Scholar, or you can even go on ChatGPT and say, give me articles that have been written on the importance of touch to the human being. So when you as a child can come into this world and you are not given the loving touch, it will affect you. It will affect you physiologically speaking. Like I just said, your immune system. Um, it can affect you psychologically. You start having feelings of rejection and abandonment, feelings of isolation. And it can affect you spiritually, because spiritual power can be transmitted by touch. And some of the touches that we want and need are the touches of our ancestors. That's why in many traditions, when an older person wants to bless a younger person, when a parent wants to bless their child, okay, or an elder wants to bless a younger person in the community, they will lay hands on them. Okay, I'm doing my fan thing, just hot flashing a little bit. Okay, and that's why we have laying on of hands, because it's in the laying on of hands that spiritual power is transmitted. So, what happens when you have mothers who don't love their daughters, or mothers who don't love their sons? That's a big problem. That's what we're going to talk about this evening. And if you wish to share, please share appropriately and share with your privacy on, because remember, the comment sections, anybody could be watching and reading. So if you're going to share anything, make sure that you're protecting your identity. Now, let me start with my personal experience, because remember that this is a place where we keep everything authentic. Okay. I was one of those kids who had this kind of mother. Okay. Initially, she did love me, but somewhere along the line, she switched. And I remember being with one of my older cousins, and she started talking about my childhood. Okay. I remember she was sharing what she saw from the outside in. She was talking about what she saw from the outside in. And I remember her saying to me, saying, "You know what, Tochi, your mother, your mother never protected you. She just sacrificed you. She just put you out there without protection." And I will say to you that at the instant she said that, it cut deep. It cut deep. But because I have had the benefit of therapy, I was able to recover from that pretty quickly. And I said to her, "Well, look at me now." And she said, everybody in the family, they were just amazed. They were just surprised, speechless. She said she just put you out there and she did not cover you at all. She did not protect you at all. Now you might be saying to yourself, well, maybe you were a grown person and you were acting up. No, I lived with her till I was about 14. So even at 14, I didn't know a lot about life. Uba Abdi, thank you. Oh, good evening, everyone. Thank you, Dr. Tochi, for covering this topic. I think life goes on if your mother doesn't love you. It's a deep pain, but there's a lesson to learn. Yeah, that's why we're having the class, because there are many people who are not getting over it. That's why we're having this class. There are a lot of people who are not getting over the fact. A lot of people are not accepting that their mother doesn't love them. And it can be painful, I agree, because you read the books, you watch the movies, you hear stories, you read your Bible, you read your Quran, and they're saying, oh, the mother's love. Nothing like a mother's love. A mother will give up her life to protect her children. The mother loves you. Your mother is your mother no matter what. Your mother is your mother, good or bad, your mother is your mother. And we live in cultures that glorify the mother egregore. And yes, I said that, the mother egregore. But it's more like a shadow mother egregore. And we're going to go into that, why I'm saying it's a shadow mother egregore. Because everyone around you is like saying your mother, your mother, your mother. You need to love your mother, honor your mother, your father. There's nothing like a mother's love wherever you are. Your mother loves you, and your mother loves you, and they're not listening to what you're saying, and that can be very painful. And you keep trying to tell somebody My mother doesn't love me. And they're like, you don't know what you're saying. It's not possible. And maybe they themselves experienced a loving mother. Or maybe they themselves are experiencing the same thing. Their own mother doesn't love them, but they're like, you know what? We're just going to run with this narrative, and hopefully, somewhere in the end, it's going to work out. And so everybody's telling this story. Oh, it's mother's love, mother's love. You know, no one will love you like your mother. No. And you're sitting there going, but my mother doesn't love me. And people are saying, but you're out of your mind. I remember, and I've told this story before in my touching base class. I remember the first time um, I saw a mother, one of my cousin's mother. What's the English phrase for that? Cousin's mother. It's for you know what I'm trying to say. The first time I saw a mother hug her child, I was shocked. But your mother carried you for 9 months. Yeah, that's what they'll tell you. There's no way she would hate you because she carried you for 9 months. But maybe she carried you with resentment. There are a lot of women who are pregnant and they're resenting the pregnancy. Okay. So I remember seeing my cousin, his mother hugging him. And I believe I was about 10 years old. And for me, that was amazing. That was amazing. And I remember going to one of my siblings, let me just use that term loosely, and saying, can you believe so and so's mother hugged him? And we sat there and wondered about this thing. I was 10 years old when I realized your mother could hug you, or a mother could hug a child. Because prior to that time, it was not it was not part of my lived experience. I was living in a world where your parents do not touch you unless they're beating you. That was my experience. The only time your parents will touch you is when they're beating you. Outside of that, and I remember around that time, we were in the living room and we're watching TV, and I put my head on my mother's laps. And, I was picking my nose, and she shoved me away from her. That was the first and the last time I ever tried that. And so I remember going back to this aunt who was hugging her son. And I said to her, my mother beats me a lot, and she doesn't hug me. And this aunt said, you must be an evil child. For your mother to be beating you all the time, you must be a bad child. You must be an evil child. That was the term she used. And you can rest assured that that was the end of that conversation. So here was I at 10 years old trying to reconcile in my mind the fact that some people's mothers hugged them and some people's mothers don't hug them. I am living God 333. The person who gave birth to me made sure her entire family and so called friends hate me with lies. It happens. That's what we're talking about. It happens. Yeah. Remember to give the class a thumbs up so that notifications will be sent to others that we are in session. That's why we're having this difficult conversation today. Okay. The hard part is telling people and no one is believing you. And sometimes you get to the point that even if you're you start numbing yourself. Maybe you start thinking maybe it's me. I remember being away at boarding school and I kept trying to tell my friends what was going on and they were blowing me off. They were kids too. We were like 11 or 12 years old. They were blowing me off too because it wasn't part of their lived experience. They it someone's one of your friends is saying to you, hey, you know what, my mom's beating me all the time for no reason. Like, I remember my mom would come home from work, and once we heard her car drive in, your heart would just skip a beat. And I remember my heart would be sitting here because I knew that as soon as she came into the house, someone was going to get beaten. That it was given. At least, Monique, when your mother treats you that way, it gives other adults the opportunity to treat you badly too. Yeah, that's what you're right. And then you, because you don't know any better, you tolerate it because you think it's normal. So I remember living through that. Is like, anytime she was coming home from anywhere, even if she went out, because they had these adult club that they belong to. An adult, I don't mean the way adult is used today, but what I meant is older people. Okay, they had like where they would like, I think the modern equivalent today would be like bingo, like where the adults will go play bingo. or, in the evening hang out, have their beers and drinks and socialize. Okay. And she would go to that and probably come back at 1 a.m. in the morning or 2 a.m. in the morning. And we would be in the house with older cousins or with, because we had maids, so-called servants. Okay. But don't start thinking to yourself, yeah, these people were living this wonderful, luxurious lifestyle. Oh my God, they had servants. No, we, the children, were no different from the servants. Okay. So they were like older servants, and we, the children, were the younger servants. We were all servants. We all wore rags. And I remember we would follow her to church and we will be like a raggedy. Does anyone remember that old poem? Now, if you went to the British system of schooling, you probably would. Does anybody remember that poem, The Pied Piper of Hamelin, that went through the town? Um, playing a flute, and all the rats and all the vermin of the town would follow him. And they hired him to remove all the rats and the vermin from town. So he would play, and as he would play, all the rats would follow him, and he would take them out somewhere where they would drown. And then when the townspeople refused to pay him, he now played his flute, and all the children followed him and left. They left their parents there. We were like the rats. My mother would be very well dressed, and we would be wearing rags following her. And Other adults, just like Elise Monique said, ended up being complicit in this because nobody would say anything to her about it. So they knew that, yeah, she's coming. That's her household. We were dressed in rags. Our clothes would, and it wasn't that we didn't have clothes. We had clothes. She would take the clothes out of the suitcase and show it to us, and then fold it and put it back in the suitcase or in the trunk box, not suitcase. We never got to wear the clothes. Either it was clothes she bought or clothes that somebody else bought. She would show it to us once. Oh, look, see these clothes? Clothes are for you. And they will be folded and put in the trunk box. We never wore them. So the clothes we did, and she said, yeah, because if it, and the justification is, oh, if you wear these clothes, you're going to rip them, and you guys do not appreciate how much clothes cost and how expensive they are. And so the clothes we had were rags because we were wearing them over and over again. And we had to learn at a young age how to mend our own clothes. So we would take a needle and thread and sew up. If there were rips and tears, you would take your clothes and you would sew them. And imagine being a kid sewing your own clothes, how your stitching would be. There was no way as a child I could shine with my mother present. It wasn't possible. It just wasn't possible. There were times we were denied food as a form of punishment. But more often than not, there was beatings, whippings, and thrashings. I got this. I want to show this. This was often used in my punishment. Does anybody know what these are? Look at them very well. Showing the YouTube people. And then those on you on TikTok. Do you know what these are? Yeah. Scotch bonnet peppers. You're correct. These were used to punish. Okay. It was like hot pepper, yeah. Scotch bonnet peppers. And what she would do is she would crack it open and smear it in my eyes and in my private part. And this was my reality until I was 14. Okay. And she would also do it to the so called servants in the house, too. And so imagine that you are telling the adults you can speak to that this is happening to you, and they will not believe you. And you will say, I am being punished with this in my privies. And the person will say, yeah, she wouldn't do that to you if you were not an evil child. But they were not treating their own children that way. So it becomes difficult when adults are complicit in these kind of things. It becomes very difficult. But you see, growing up, I never thought about it that, oh, my mother doesn't love me. because everybody around me was saying the reason why she's doing this to you is because she loves you. If she didn't love you, she wouldn't punish you. And this is a twisted logic that many of us grow up with. And the rational part of our heads, our minds, is trying to make sense of it and can't make sense of it. But the emotional part of us says, if the elders are saying this, if my community and my family are saying this, then it must be true. I have to be careful. I touch these peppers. I don't want to smear my own eyes and put pepper in my own eyes with myself. And you would sit with other people who were going through the same thing, and they will say, they do all these things to you so that you can be tough and you can handle life. Okay. Um, yes, multiple failures in your village. My grandmother was the same because my dad was dark skinned. Yeah. There's sometimes we would get whipped and you'll have welts on the skin, and then she would take this, crush it, and rub it on the welts. Say, I want you to feel this thing. And this is just the physical. We're not even talking about the verbal. You will never amount to anything without me. You will never achieve anything in life without me. You will never be anybody in life without me. Just that constant. If I curse you, you'll be cursed forever. If I curse you, your life will be ruined. And so you're living with this fear. I don't want this person to curse me. I don't want her to curse me. But you see, we still, and now that I'm an adult, okay, even through my 50s, it still didn't occur to me that there's a possibility that mothers would not love their children. Even in my 50s, when I was in my 50s. That's how deep this egregore is. Okay. That's how deep the Shadow Mother Egregore is. I was just telling somebody recently, one event that we had, and I have to be very careful. Well, thank you for the heart me. Love 3. Thank you for the gift. I was just sharing with somebody about one of the events I had in my childhood, and I have to be very careful the way I say it because of these platforms. Okay, so I'm just going to call them events. On YouTube, please go ahead and give the live stream a thumbs up. That lets people know that we are in session. If you don't mind, give the live stream, the class, a thumbs up. Okay. So there was one event, and you never knew what would trigger her. You're just, you could cough. You could cough, and she's like, "Why are you bothering me?" And you'll get a whooping. You know, it's anything could trigger her. But I remember this day. I don't know what it is we did, and she stripped us butt naked and shoved us out the back door. And she said, "You are ungrateful." I feed you, I clothe you, you are ungrateful. So and not it's not just the stripping naked and being thrown out. You, of course, you get beaten before. And she says, "You will give me everything I have ever given to you: the clothes, we didn't wear shoes then. We didn't wear shoes. We're always barefoot. Um, our clothes were taken away, our underwear was taken away, and we were put out the back door." And she said, "Go out there and fend for yourself. Go out there and make a living. Go out there and figure out a way to clothe yourself because y'all are ungrateful." And so we're outside in the backyard, butt naked, with the neighbors looking at us. And so the neighbors were the ones that had to come and start interceding for us. And the nature of the intercession is, "Oh, why are you so ungrateful? Your mother does everything for you." Because that was the only way to placate her. You could not go to her and say, "Hey, this is not right." No, you had to be on her side. I could go on and on and on. There was a time I wrote something on a piece of paper because it was going on and on. And I remember one time I was by myself and I used to read things, and she had a library of books and I would read the books there and stuff. I was a voracious reader. And I remember on a piece of paper writing, "I don't know, maybe I'm a love child." Because in those books I was reading, a love child was a child born out of wedlock. Like back in the day, they would say a bastard. So I was like, because I don't understand if this person is my real mother. It is possible that I'm not really her child. And I hid this paper where I had dumped my thoughts inside one of my dressers. And she went there and she read it, but she didn't say anything until one day she was beating me for something. And she's like, "You are so ungrateful. Do you think I did not see what you wrote there, that you are a love child? You are just like your father." I am I am living God 333 says, "You had a terrible childhood. That's sad. Mine was pretty bad, not as bad as yours." So it's like, thank God it happened to you and not to me. And I got beaten for that note. You know, I remember getting beaten for uh, not finishing my food. I got beaten for finishing my food. I got beaten for begging for food. I was hungry and begged for food. I got beaten for that. Um, I got beaten for laughing. I got beaten for crying. So if she was beating you and you were crying, if she figured that you were crying too much, she would beat you some more so that you would stop crying while she was beating you. I got beaten for looking like her mother. I got beaten for resembling her mother. That was when I was 12. She said, "Oh, this girl is hard to handle." And the funny thing is, when I look back on it, I never, we the way we were raised, you could not talk back. You could, it's not like nowadays you talk to the kids and the kids will talk back. You couldn't even talk back. But she would look at you and say, I know what you're thinking. I know what you're thinking. I know that you are hoping I will die. I know you, in your mind, you're just hoping something will happen to me. And then she will beat you for that, for thinking. Erica Baker says you couldn't even ask a question. What? Are you out of your mind? Of course you can't ask it. What kind of question do you think you would? So you would even get beaten for assumed thoughts. Like she would look at you and she'd say, I know what you're thinking, and then proceed to beat you. I know you're thinking I'm wicked. I know you're thinking I'm a bad mother, and then she'll beat you. Um, it was just um anything could happen anytime. You know, your clothes were dirty, got beaten. Your clothes were raggedy, you got beaten, even though you were not given new clothes. Like we got new clothes to wear once a year at Christmas. And those clothes you got at Christmas, you were expected to wear them for the rest of the following year. You didn't get no new clothes. And like I mentioned earlier, if someone came and said, hey, I got some clothes, I bought that, I went somewhere and I bought clothes, she would show it to you. She would fold it and put it away in a trunk box. And I remember when, after she passed, we went through the trunk boxes and we saw baby clothes still with tags on it. Remember, this lady died when I was a teenager. We were going through the trunk boxes and seeing baby clothes, children's clothes with tags on them, unworn. Shoes, socks, shirts, pants, skirts, dresses, the headband things that little girls would wear. And of course, at that point, none of that could fit us. We were too big for them. We saw china, silverware, glassware, linens, untouched, unused. But there was nowhere in our minds, or at least in my mind, that I came to the conclusion that I was not loved by my mother. Because everybody around me told me, oh, your mother loves you. And I remember when she passed and we had her funeral, and people would come to me and say, oh, your mother would always, she will defend you from the grave. A mother will never watch to see her children uh, being maltreated or being oppressed by anyone else. Rest assured that your mother is now in the land of spirit and she'll come and fight for you. And I remember laughing at that. And the person thinking something was wrong with me. And I was like, if she didn't defend me when she was alive, what makes you think she will come and fight for me when she's now gone? Even when she was on her bed in the hospital, as she was dying on her bed, it was still on. I know you're just saying in your mind, hurry up and die so I can leave. And I was not saying anything. I was just looking at her. And she was just playing all these scenarios for me. I know you just hope I die. I just die and get out of your way, because she died of cancer. I know that's what you want. And I would not say a word. And I did not say a word because accidentally I found out what breaks the hold. I am living God 333 says, I wonder if those parents were possessed, influenced by evil to treat their own like that. We'll get into it. And as a child, I often thought that. There were times we would be, you know, because we could let me paint the picture, because there's some of us out here saying, oh, my mom is not doing this for me, and my mother didn't do this for me, and my mother is always badgering me. We could not sit in the same living room as she was on the chairs. We could not. And I want to tell, and maybe you might be saying to yourself, oh, maybe that's what happened in Africa. I was born in Canada. You can look me up. I was born in Canada. So don't think that this is something that happens with immigrants, African immigrants or Asian immigrants, or it only happens in their home countries. It happens right here. We could, if we're all in the living room, we could not sit on the chairs. You had to sit on the floor. If she took us out for an event, she would tell us you cannot eat there. And she'll be watching to make sure we did not eat. If you ate, you got beaten. So if somebody wanted to feed us, if we went out, they had to take us to the back. They would say, oh, do you want to use the restroom? You say yes, and they'll go feed you in the bathroom. Okay, Erica Baker says, no, it definitely happened here in Louisiana. It was my grandmother, not my mom. Yeah. Because, the children were seen as a burden, as a problem. You're not useful until you get older and you start making money. And when you start making money, then you can pay me back for bringing you into this world. You can pay me back for feeding you and tolerating you and putting clothes on your back and putting a roof over your head. You're just an asset. You're just a means of production. You're my life insurance for when I get older. But like I was saying, when she put me out at 14, why did she put me out at 14? Something had happened. I don't even remember what it was. And she called me into her room for a beating. Okay. So she called me into her room for a beating. And I remember going into her room and she was yelling and screaming and carrying on. And I know she was going to slap, because usually how it started was, because she was a physically strong woman. So usually what she would do is she would slap you and slap you down to the ground. And then once you hit the ground, then that's where the whippings, beating, thrashings, the kickings, and the everything would happen. She would first reduce you to the ground. So I remember I was 14, and I was the only person in the. I think I was, yeah, the only child left in the house at the time. And there was a cousin who was in the house with us then. And like I said before, everybody got their ass tore up by her. So, other relatives who are not well off would send their children to come and live with us so that, she could help raise their children. Maybe the kids could get an education or something like that. And she would treat everybody just like that. Okay. So I remember she called me into her room and she started. And, I wore glasses. I started wearing glasses at 11 or 12. And I remember I had my glasses on. They were simple glasses, not these fancy things. But I remember I was wearing my glasses and she was carrying on, and I'm not saying anything because I already knew I was going to get beaten. And then she came with that slap, because but before that slap happened, I remember saying in my mind to myself, if she slaps me, I will not cry. You need to understand where it's coming from. This is somebody who have been going through this all her life, that night, I said, it doesn't matter what she does, I will not cry. And so, and just as I expected, that swipe came, bang on my face, and my glasses flew off in the corner, and I just stood there, and I looked at her, and that was the first time ever I saw fear in her eyes and her face. You see, when we talk about egregores, remember I've been teaching this series on egregores. The egregore depends on emotions, especially negative emotions. That's what feeds the egregore. And a lot of these mothers are working with a shadow mother egregore. What is a shadow mother egregore? It's an entity in families and in lineages, okay? Born of patriarchal systems, even matriarchal systems. And it is fed and made stronger by generational trauma, jealousy, envy, suppression, violence, and things of that nature. And usually, this is an egregore that was set up generations ago to control the feminine in the lineage. Remember, and if you're not familiar with egregores, I've done classes on egregores. I did one 3 weeks ago. What is an egregore? How are they created and stuff? People will get together. So you have patriarchal systems that say we need to control and dominate the females. And so you start having structures put in place to do just that. But the sad part of these egregores is that the greatest devotees of the Shadow Mother Egregores are the women themselves. The greatest devotees who feed the Shadow Mother Egregore are the women themselves. So you are trained as a woman. Oh, the women need to, your daughter needs to be circumcised. And then in societies in Africa and Asia where they circumcise women, it's the women who are doing the circumcision, not the men. It's the women. But it is done for the pleasure of the men. It is done for the approval of the men, but it is the women who do it. It's the women who hold their daughters. It's the women who do the cutting. And it's the women who sell the story. If you do this thing, you will get a good husband. If you do this thing, you'll be seen, perceived as a good girl. If you do this thing, you will have a good life. If you do these things, your husband will trust you. But it's the women. So it's the women that feed the Shadow Mother Egregore that was created to control them. Many lineages carry this egregore. And it doesn't matter whether that lineage part of them traveled, lived in other places, got sold into slavery. They continue feeding this egregore because they continue maintaining the belief systems that feed the egregore. And remember when we talked about egregores, we said egregores feed on attention and they feed on emotions. That's what feeds them. Now, you might be saying to yourself, okay, Dr. Tochi, you're telling the story of your mom. How does that fit into it? Well, let me share this with you. She would often tell us stories of her own experiences as a young woman. And there was always somebody fighting somebody, somebody in conflict with somebody, and who did what to whom, and who wasn't doing what to whom, and the other, the whatnot. And she never told me any stories about her mother. She did tell stories about other adults in the family who she felt did not treat her well, but she never, for one day, told me stories about her own mother because she was in conflict with her mother. So whatever I know about her mother came from other relatives, from her siblings and other relatives who knew her mother. Okay. And remember when I said there was a time she beat me for looking like her mother? That will show you how deep this thing goes. Because oftentimes, in order to maintain control over the women, women are set against each other. They are raised to compete with each other. So you have mothers competing with their daughters, sisters competing against each other, grandmothers competing with their granddaughters. And this is not to say that the men didn't experience this. There are some men who went through it with their mothers. But I'm just coming from a daughter perspective. There is a reason why in politics they have this term called divide and conquer. divide and conquer. If I can set every one of you against each other, you can't come together and fight me. You can't join forces and fight me. So when you have patriarchal systems that, and remember, the patriarchal system itself also has egregores. So you have patriarchal egregores. So the patriarchal egregore encourages the society to create shadow mother egregores in order for that patriarchal egregore to remain relevant and strong and living. Remember, we talked about that when we talked about the creation of religious egregores. And when an egregore has a certain level of consciousness and self consciousness, it will do everything possible to survive. It will influence people like a person. Remember when we talked about the Jesus apparitions, the Jesus egregore, and the apparitions of Jesus? And these are manifestations where people are turning around and saying, I am seeing Jesus. And they're interacting with this thing, but they're interacting with an egregore. Because remember, egregores have functions, they have tasks. They're not spirit guides. Okay? They're not spirit guides. So I remember, how was that event with my grandmother? Okay, so we went to this guy's house. He was a distant uncle. And he had these things called almanacs. Okay. And they're not like the American almanacs, which are like a book that talks about the seasons and moon phases and planting seasons and stuff like that. No, almanacs in there, and there is was like a poster, and it was a calendar, and then you had people who sponsored that calendar, and so you'd have their pictures at the bottom of the calendar. It's just like when you go to a company and they give you a free calendar, and they have their little advertisements. So churches and organizations like that back then would have these, what they call these almanacs, and they were like calendars, and at the bottom they would have the pictures of the church council members or committee members or the important people in the churches. So anywho, this guy had this almanac on his wall, and my grandmother's picture was there, even though my grandmother had died. Well, my grandmother, that's her mother, had died even before she got married. And I had been to the man's house before, and he had shown me the picture before. He says, "That's your grandmother." So I kind of knew that was my grandmother, okay? Because I had relatives tell me, "Oh, your grandmother used to be an important person, and she was a wealthy woman, and she was, a church supporter, sponsor, and blah, 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 blah." And for the record, I don't even look like my grandmother. Maybe the eyes, but outside of that, my nose is not my grandmother's nose. Lips, she had thinner lips. She had a thinner nose. She was slimmer. But anyways, so I remember one day my mother and I went to go see this man. It was in the village, and he had this almanac on the wall, and he had gone to the back for something, and it was just she and I sitting in his living room. And she called me and she took me to the almanac and she showed me her mother's picture. She didn't say to me, "This is my mother's picture." She just took me to the almanac and she pointed at her mother's picture. She didn't tell me it was her mother's picture now. She just pointed at the picture and she said to me, "Who is this?" And so I read the caption under the picture. I read it and I said, "Oh, it's blah, 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 blah." She says, "I'm asking you, who is that?" And I kept reading the caption and I'm saying, "Well, it's Mrs. So and so." And next thing I know, she slapped me and she said, "Confess. Who is that? You know it's you." And I started crying. And the man came out of the back room and he saw what was going on and he started scolding her. He says, "Leave her alone. How do you expect her to know?" And she started arguing with him and she says, "Yes, she knows who she is. She knows who she is." And the man kept saying, "How do you expect her to know?" So now that I'm an older person, I look at that and I say, okay, so she was in conflict with her own mother. And I guess they didn't have the best of relationships. And when I was born, back in the day, they used to have telegrams. Some of you might know what telegrams are, and I'm not talking about the app called Telegram. Okay. Back in the day, what they used to do is when you were born away from home, they would send a telegram to the family to let them know, hey, there's a new baby in town. And they did that when I was born. And so when she took us to Africa several years later, I remember one time she was speaking aloud to one of her siblings that said, "I wonder whose incarnation this child is." And the brother said, "Oh, we went and asked, we did a divination. That's our mother." And that was a turning point when she started coming against me. And at that time, I was like 6 years old or 7 years old. Again, so why am I telling you all of this? You need to understand that a lot of mothers are battling their own trauma. And when somebody is in the middle of their own trauma, they are not reasoning rationally. They're not thinking logically. They're thinking emotionally. And they're just reacting. When they look at you, they're saying, "I wish I could do over. I wish I had my youth back. I wish I had my energy back. I wish I had my beauty back. I wish I was slimmer. I wish I had the opportunity to do my life over." And you as a child, you're just there, being a child, and they're angry. How come you get to be young? You get to be pretty. You get to experience life with fresh eyes. And here I am. I have to pay bills. Maybe I've gone through a divorce. Maybe I've gone through an abusive marriage. Maybe I have horrible in laws. Maybe I have a bad job. Maybe I have not achieved the financial success and standards that I had set for myself. And so the person at that point is not thinking rationally, they're thinking emotionally. And then the Shadow Mother Egregore is right there in the background saying, make that child pay. Look at it this way. When people are dealing with one of the hundreds of Jesus egregores out there, oftentimes they act like they're out of their mind. You will see some people, like I was watching a video today on TikTok where a man was proudly saying that he had sold his car and gave the proceeds to his church. And the person interviewing him said, why did you do that? He said, oh, I heard the testimony of somebody else, and that person gave their last money, and a miracle happened in their life. And my wife and I wanted to start a new business. Money was tight, so I had sold my car and I had kind of put the money aside so we could start a new business. But when I heard this person's testimony, I believed. So I took all that money and I handed it over to the church. And that is my sacrifice, that is my offering. And you're sitting and you're watching this video and you're asking yourself, is this man okay? And the answer is like, no, he's not okay. Because why would you sell your core and take all the money and give it to your church and hope for a miracle? And you don't have to do anything else but to sit and wait for the miracle to happen. You're not doing anything else. You're just hoping for a miracle. So when women are working with this Shadow Mother Egregore, a lot of them are working with it unconsciously because their mothers worked with it. Their grandmothers worked with it, fed it, gave it attention, gave it emotion, sacrificed themselves and their children's to it. Children's. Did I just say children's? Children to it. And oftentimes they don't recognize that they are working with and under the influence of an egregore. Some mothers are under the influence of multiple egregores. So they could be under the influence of a shadow mother egregore that's always punishing them and giving them a hard time and telling them you have to do this in order to be a good wife, in order for people to recognize you as a good wife, a good mother, a good citizen, a good daughter, a good this. You have to keep on giving, sacrificing, suffering, and this and that. And in order to be a good mother, you have to teach your children how to suffer, and you make sure that your children understand, especially your daughters have to suffer, and that is your destiny, to suffer. And all the messages they're getting from that shadow mother egregore is all about debasement and humiliation and embarrassment and being less than and shrinking and everything. And if you do all these things, you will be called a blessed mother. If you do all these things, you will be called a good mother. And you will reap the rewards of mothers. And so that's why, again, you have the culture and the society saying, oh, your mother is your mother. It doesn't matter what she does. Your mother is your mother. Your mother loves you. Because their belief is, if I do this, remember the nuns we're talking about that, that serve the martyr, the Jesus egregore, the martyr one. Yeah, if I'm suffering and I'm in pain, God will deem me worthy. If I'm in pain, if I'm in suffering, if I'm bleeding, if I'm doing all these things, fasting and castigating myself and self-denigrating, then God will see me as worthy. It's the same thing with the Shadow Mother Egregore. If I do all these things to myself and my children, I will be called a good mother. I will be respected. I will be honored. My culture, my family, my society will support me. So they do it. I remember her telling stories about her stepdad. Let me just use that term, stepdad, because she never met him in person. It wasn't her real dad. And I remember her telling stories of his methods of punishment. He used this on his wives, plural, and children. He used this to discipline his wives and children. So it became normal. And he wasn't a Christian. And he was all about getting power for himself. He was all about power. How can I get power? How can I get political power, physical power, spiritual power? And he didn't care how he got power. He would do things to get power. Thank you, thank you, thank you for the gift. He would do things to get power. So now, and in his household, women were second-class citizens. How do you expect any mother growing up in any mother living in that kind of household to instill self-esteem in her daughters? It's not possible. It's not possible. Because in those kinds of households, they worshipped the power egregore. And that egregore set up other kinds of egregores to maintain control. And so her stories were all about instilling fear in people in order to get their respect. If I can get you to fear me, then you will respect me. But the question now becomes, if the person no longer fears you, then what are you going to do? What are you going to do if the person no longer fears you? And that's what happened to me at 14. So remember, I was telling the story when she did that slap and I just stood there and I didn't react. She was the one who became afraid. And I learned something. I was like, aha, So if I choose to stand and not react, she will become afraid. I started doing more of that. And she put me out of her house at 14. And a couple of years later, 2 years later or so, when she lay dying in the hospital, remember now I've learned that lesson. I showed no emotion and I showed no fear. And so she was carrying on, and I'm just looking at her. And that's a new level of fear because now the person doesn't fear you. What are you going to do? The person is not helping you worship or maintain that egregore that you are under. What are you going to do? The person doesn't want to participate with you in the upholding of that egregore. What are you going to do? It's a place of fear. That is why when people leave churches, for instance, and disengage from the Jesus egregore, the leaders of the churches get upset because they can no longer use fear of that egregore to control the person. So if a person, for instance, says, I'm no longer going to go to church, I don't believe in Jesus, I don't believe in the sky God, I don't believe in all those things, I don't believe in your book, I don't believe your Bible, I don't believe any of that. And you imagine someone telling you that, I don't believe in that. I don't believe in Bros J. I don't believe in any of that. And you go to the person and you say to the person, you will go to hell. Don't you see? The person will laugh at you because the person just told you they don't believe in that. And they have substituted that Jesus egregore with probably another kind of egregore. So if you're there saying, oh, you're going to burn in hellfire or whatever, the person's like, whatever. I don't care. You can't scare them anymore. And that's how it is when somebody says, you know what, I am not going to participate in this Shadow Mother Egregore. I will not parent with fear. And I will not enable you mother me with fear. If you don't want to talk to me like a human being, if you don't want to treat me like a child, if you don't want to treat me like your child the way you're supposed to, I'm out of here. And you suddenly discover that that mother becomes powerless. When that daughter or that son says, I'm not participating in this. And the mother is like, if you don't do this, I will curse you. And the child says, I don't care. And I don't care because everything you're saying is not true. I don't care. You see, the power is lost and the child gains freedom. And so that's why I was able to watch her on her deathbed. And she was like, and you want me to die. And I'm telling you, you're going to die before I die. Now you're dying. And you're telling me I'm going to die before you die. But you're the one who's dying. So I'm just sitting there and looking. And when that wasn't moving me, she started talking about, and I did this for you, and I did this for you. If I didn't give birth to you in Canada, you wouldn't be a Canadian citizen. I didn't react to it. Look at your life now. You're having all these problems. You're not in school. No one is interested in helping you. You're just out on the streets. And at that time, yeah, nobody was helping me. I was out on the streets. It was true. Because my stepfather wasn't doing what he should have done. So, yeah, I was out of school. But I still did not respond. So she had no way of knowing if the barbs she was sending my way was hitting the target because I wasn't responding to it. And she's like, guess what? You have more punishment and suffering coming your way. I still didn't respond to it. I just sat there looking at her. And then she started crying. The strong woman started crying. I didn't respond to it. Because remember, several years prior, I had decided I was not going to participate. And this is a decision that many of us have to make. You have to get to a point where you're saying, I will no longer participate in this madness. You're saying that if I don't do as you say, if I don't bow down to you, if I don't worship the Shadow Mother Egregore with you, I'm not going to see good in my life. Well, guess what? Everybody has problems. There are people who love their mothers and their mothers love them and they still have problems. There are lots of women who have children and they love their children with everything in their every fiber in their being, but they're not financially okay, or they're not, at a high social level or whatever the standard is. Life happens to everyone. And another example I'd like to give around this is, do you remember how, like, the church people will say to you, if you don't accept Jesus as your Lord and Savior, you will die. If you don't confess your sins, you will die. If you don't join their church, you will die. If this blah 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 blah, you'll die. And so people become afraid and join the church because they don't want to die. But if you want to destroy that argument right there, you can do one thing that I do with some of the church people when I have time. When someone runs up to me and says, accept Jesus or you will die, you will go to hell and burn and die, I say to them, okay, so are you telling me if I accept your Jesus, I will not die? The person says, yes, you will have everlasting life. I say, okay, so I will not die. So you now, you will not die, you will live forever. And they're like, yeah, you know, when you die, you will live. And then you start seeing the logic breaking down. So I'm like, okay, wait a minute. So for me to have the everlasting life, I still gotta die in order to have the everlasting life. So, in other words, you're still gonna die in order to get the everlasting life. But you're telling me if I don't do what you say, I would die. Yeah, but the difference between my die and your die is that when you die, you're going to hell. But when I die, I'm going to everlasting life. Wouldn't you like to have everlasting life? I'm like, no, not exactly. And you find out that that conversation breaks down right there. Because basically, you're saying, I'm not interested in what you have to sell. So if you're telling me that I have to keep worshiping you, doing what you want, allow myself to be misused and used by you in order for me to be blessed, that's a lie. It's a lie. Because life happens to everybody. Life doesn't care if you're rich, you're poor, you're white, you're black, you're yellow, you're brown, you're green, you're pink, you're orange. Life don't care. Life don't care about your religion. Life don't care about your spiritual beliefs. Life will happen to you as long as you inhale and exhale. Life will happen to you. And how you navigate that depends on the strategy that you have. And that's why we do our practical spirituality, because the practical spirituality gives you a strategy. You have a strategy for handling life so that when life is happening, you know what to do. But oftentimes, when we're engaged with the Shadow Mother Egregore, first of all, the sad part is that mother who doesn't love you will not teach you how to navigate life. So you end up thinking that your lack of success is because of her lack of approval. No. The reason why you are stagnant, reason why you're not doing well, the reason why you're confused, the reason why you're unclear, the reason why you are afraid, the reason why you're traumatized, the reason why you're not moving forward, the reason why you don't know what to do is because she hasn't shown you what to do. It's that simple. If someone didn't teach you how to read and write, you cannot read and write. And let me repeat this for those in the back. If someone did not teach you how to read and write, you cannot read and write. So if someone didn't teach you how to read and write, you cannot read and write. Can the person then turn around and say, you will never be anything in this life without me? Yeah, they haven't taught you how to read and write. And in order for you to function successfully in this life, you need to know how to read and write. So when a mother does not love her child, when a mother does not love her daughter, especially, she will not teach her how to navigate life because she wants you to fail. If I don't think about an office situation, you're working at a job and no one is teaching you how to do that work well. You have a couple of options. Either you have to find someone to teach you what to do on the job, or you go find another job because you're going to get blamed very quickly. But the people who do well on the job are the ones who have someone to teach them how to do the job. Those who have mentors on the job do well on the job, because they have someone to show them the way, someone to teach them. But if you don't have someone to teach you how to do the job, you're not going to do well on the job. You're going to struggle on that job. And that's how it is with life. If your parents don't teach you how to navigate life, you will find it difficult to navigate life because you don't know what to do. So if the person's there in the background saying, without me, you're not going to make it. Without me, this is going to happen. That's going to happen. And I'm going to curse you. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. The simple antidote to that is go and find someone who will teach you. And then you find out that you're dealing with a toothless bulldog. Once you have someone teach you how to navigate life, how to solve problems in life, you will find out that all those things are meaningless. And so, what are the tools that these kinds of mothers use to control you? They don't teach you how to socialize. They don't teach you how to make friends. They don't teach you how to find helpers. They don't teach you how to reason. They don't teach you how to make the right choices. Many of them will not even teach you basic skills you need to know in order to live by yourself. Many of these mothers will not even teach you how to find a spouse. They will not even send anybody your way. I don't know if some of you are familiar with Tina Turner. The late Tina Turner, a singer. And in one interview, and you can look up this interview yourself, she said one of the biggest enemies she had in her life was her own mother. And it didn't matter what she did for her mother was never happy. Her mother never loved her. She bought cars, houses, clothes, jewelry, name it for the mother. Her mother would never acknowledge her success. Never. Never. And one time she ran away from Ike. It was her mother who called Ike and told her where she was so that Ike could go there and go and bring her back, drag her back. Her own mother. And people were like, okay, why was Tina Turner's mother doing that? Some people said, well, because she didn't want to stop the flow of money that was coming to her through Ike. So she knew as long as Tina Turner was with Ike Turner, she would always be getting money. She would always be getting things. You need to understand that your mother is motivated by her self-interest the same way that you're motivated by your self-interest. Okay. So we need to understand that this is the wound. This is the wound. Not every mother loves her daughter. Not every mother loves her son. Some people were made mothers against their will. They didn't want to be mothers, and life happened and they became mothers. And even though they're there saying, I want to be a mother, I want to be a mother, in their heart of hearts, they never wanted to be a mother. And so if you were born to that kind of person, you will suffer. You will suffer until you find your way. I had to go get therapy. That's why I can talk about it now. More than 40 years later, 50 years later. So yeah, 50 years now. And you may have to go get therapy. You may have to go get therapy. Many people have to go get therapy. Okay? There are many women who, in their heart of hearts, did not want to be a mother. Or maybe they didn't want to be the kind of mother they were forced to be. Many women did not even want to bear children for certain men, but circumstances forced them to have children for the men they did not want to impregnate them. So yeah, the person was their husband or boyfriend or fiancé or whatever, and they had a child together, but that's not what she wanted. And if you happen to be the result of that union, you will suffer. And it'll be very difficult for her to love you. Because every time she looks at you, you are a reminder of what she did not want. There are some women who were married off very young. You know, back in the day, their cultures, even now, they will marry off their daughters at 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. And oftentimes, that's not what those girls want. That's not what they want. And then you came along. There are some women who became mothers because of grape. Someone touching them when they were not supposed to be touched. And you came along and they didn't want you. Some women became mothers because their own mothers offered them up. Here, you can have my daughter. We owe money or we owe an obligation. So here, you can have my daughter. The daughter becomes payment for whatever it is that her mother or her father was doing. She will be angry. And she'll find it difficult to love you. Okay. Some women do what they do out of ignorance. And the Shadow Mother Egregore rides them like a horse and possesses them and says to them, a good mother punishes, a good mother inflicts suffering. And you too, as a mother, must suffer. If you don't suffer, you're not a good mother. If there's no crying and gnashing of teeth, then you're not a worthy woman. And they buy into it. Some women are triggered. There was this case of a woman who was triggered because people were telling her how pretty and beautiful her daughter was. And she remembered her own youth when she used to be pretty and beautiful, and people told her she was pretty and beautiful. And now people were no longer telling her she was pretty and beautiful. They were telling the daughter. So she became her daughter's rival instead of becoming her daughter's ally. Okay. And like I said, when someone is dealing with these kinds of egregores, they're not thinking with their rational mind. They're thinking with their emotional minds. They're thinking about how they feel. And when somebody's so concerned and focused on how they feel, they're not focused on how you feel. I think, was it in a class or something, I was talking about somebody I've dealt with recently, and all this person is concerned about is, she's a mother, is me, 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 me. Even as her own child lay dying, it was still me, 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 me. Who's going to take care of me? Who's going to serve me? Who's going to give me? Give me, 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 me. Even during her child's funeral, her all she had to say about her child is, "Oh, my child said, y'all need to take care of me now. Now my child ain't here. Y'all got to take care of me. Me, 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 me." Interfered so much in her child's marriage's child could not stay married. It has to be me. And when the child's spouse wouldn't worship her and bow down to her and accede to everything that she wanted, she went ahead and single-handedly wrecked her child's marriage. It's me, 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 me. Okay. We've been going at this for about 2 hours now. What questions do you have about this topic? And like I said, I know it's a kind of heavy topic, but it's one that needs to be addressed. What questions, what comments do you have about this topic? It is your obligation to obtain your freedom. Because if you have a mother who doesn't love you, let me repeat what I said before, nothing you will do will make her love you. She's battling her own thing. And if she's entrenched in her egregore or entrenched in multiple egregores, she will not hear you. She will not understand you. She's not going to listen to you. We were having conversations, was it earlier today? And people were talking about their moms and how their moms would bother them for money and keep on, you're not giving me money, and I want money and money and money and why money. And but the mothers would never ask them, how are you doing? Never say, how is your day? How is it going with you? Never gave them credit, never gave them praise. But once they figured out that the child had some money, they would be demanding money. Give me, give me, give me money, give me money. And some of them would then turn around and give that money to the church. And the child was just a means to an end. I don't love you. I don't care about you. But if you can give me money for me to give to my church so that I can maintain my social standing and reputation in the church, then I'll allow you near me, because what you're doing now is helping my reputation and my image with the people who matter to me. But if you can't give me what I need to maintain my reputation with the people who matter to me, you don't mean anything to me. You cannot force such a person to love you. Go and find someone else to be your mother. If you need to have a mother figure, you have a right to go find someone else to be a mother to you. You have a right to go form a new identity away from her. And this is why you have some children just basically saying, you know what, I'm not even going to deal with this. I'm cutting off. Because the longer I'm in this situation, the worse my mental state or emotional state or psychological state is going to be. And so you see the child cutting off, the daughter just saying, you know what, I don't want to deal with this. And there comes a point when you just have to say that I'm no longer participating in this thing, whatever it is. If you don't want to love me, if you can't love me, I'm sending you along with peace, light, and love, and I will go and seek love where I can get it. I'm going to go forge a new identity for myself. I will find and develop strategies for handling life. I will go learn from others how to tackle life, since you don't want to teach me how to handle the problems of my life, which you're supposed to do as my mother, but you're not doing that. So I'm going to go find someone to teach me how to do that. Good luck to you. And there are many women and men who have done this, and they're living successful lives. They cut the cords and they moved on. So don't feel that you have to stay there and continue the charade with the hopes that, oh, if I keep on doing things for her, if I keep on sacrificing myself, if I keep on running these errands, even if she doesn't want it or not, that one day she will wake up and love me. She will never wake up and love you. And if she should open her mouth and say to you, oh, I love you, you can bet your last dime that she just needs something from you. And she already knows that that's your soft button. If she tells you I love you, you're gonna open up and give her everything she needs, but she doesn't really love you. And you know, because your heart and your intuition would tell you that this woman doesn't really love you. But sometimes people will accept that, oh, I'll take anything. Half bread is better than none. No, you are injuring yourself. Sometimes you have to bite the bullet and accept reality for what it is. If your mother doesn't love you, she doesn't love you. Come to terms with it. Come to terms with it. Your life is not over. You can move forward. You can create a new life, new identity for yourself without her. You can't, there's nothing you will do that will make her love you. Because nothing you will do will satisfy her. Nothing. Nothing. Nothing you will do will make her proud of you. Nothing you will do will make her change her view of you. Nothing. Nothing. And you need to come to a point of acceptance of that so you can start healing. There is nothing you will do, nothing you can do that will make her love you. Once you understand that and accept that, then you can start moving on. All right, so any questions? I need to put on my air purifier. Okay, so I'm gonna post this class on YouTube. So if you need a replay, I know it's a long class, but if you need a replay, it's going to be here. Okay, no questions. Everybody fully educated. All right. Can you believe I made a cup of tea 2 hours ago? We're thankful to our Creator, our guardian spirits, our ancestors, and our spirit guides for today's forbidden fruit. And that's all we can say. Ashe, Ise, Kamaga, Takosa, Lasedi, Makwande, Aibobo, Inyanho. It is done. It is finished. It's complete. Amen. Ma'at. Thank you for coming to class. And thank you to folks on TikTok.